So here it is, and I just wanted to have you guys hear when I pull the tape off. The idea is, again, trying to save the panel lines as much as possible. So I take a little bit of sandpaper, roll it over a little bit, and I sand very gently right along that seam with the tape on to get some of the initial high points off. Shouldn't be too bad because we use that little Q-tip and the thinner, so it should be pretty smooth. There will likely be a little step there because when you take the tape off, of course, that has a thickness to it. It is very very thin, but it will still have a little step on the putty then. But I can go back with some wet dry, and I think I'll get it down pretty good. What we'll do then is when we prime it, we'll have to probably go back and do a little touch up, which is not that big of a deal. But I pull off these tapes, and what you end up with is a very fine strip of primer of the putty, and it just fills the hole that was there. I just want it to not look like the Grand Canyon like it did before, and I think it will look fine. We're going to end up doing lots of weathering on this thing and all those things. We're going to put on scuffs and brakes and all kinds of stuff on it, I think. So it doesn't have to be fantastic, but you can see now there's a little strip. And it's actually pretty smooth, at least by my fat little finger, how it feels. Um, and we do the same thing up over the nose. This part, looking at it, remember I said that this putty seems to shrink a little? This part definitely did. I'll probably need to put a little something on top here one more time after I prime it. It would just be a little lick of things, but I think I'm probably going to have to. Not difficult to do. It won't mess anything up, but I think that's going to be in my future, which is not bad. Pull these off, same thing happens. You've got that little edge, and only that piece is covered. And so now, when you sand a little bit, my removal of the panel lines, if they're there, is minimal. Because, like I say, I want to keep them there. And I saw somebody on YouTube do a really nice job with this particular model using the raised panel lines, and I think it looked great. Kind of highlighted them, and they still look really wonderful. So that's what we're going to try to do. Come back with wet dry, and wet dry, I usually use saliva. I lick the paper, sandpaper, and do it, or I lick my finger and put it on there, or I lick the bottle. It depends on who's watching. But normal people would use a little water. Um, I just figure saliva is the universal solvent. Um, and so just kind of sand that down, and it's amazing how just a little bit of sanding makes it very, very smooth. So I did the same thing back here on the top of this scoop, because I sanded it down a little bit, but now it needs a little help here in the with the wet dry sandpaper. Again, just to smooth things out so that it looks good. It doesn't take much. I know when I was little and I used to try to do stuff like this, when I look at Fine Scale Modeler, or there was one called Scale Models or something. It was a really cool magazine from it was before Fine Scale Modeler or before I knew about it, but it was a really cool magazine. And I tried to emulate stuff I saw in there, and it was a disaster. But I do remember trying to fill the wing roots on a Monogram P-40, and it didn't. I would say didn't really, I don't know, turn out. There used to be a place called the Squadron Shop in, I think, someplace in Virginia, because I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time. And I remember we'd go there, and oh, they had all these models just everywhere, all displayed, and dioramas, and all this cool, just model after model. And oh, I loved that place. So I tried to make my models like that. And of course, as an 8-year-old, they never really turned out quite that way. But now I'll pull this piece off in preparation to start masking, masking the canopies, which I don't have on video, admittedly, because it was a very tedious, slow job. Um, that piece had to be filled a little bit more, and then I sanded that down later, and it turned out just fine. Um, I don't have these. Didn't take video of actually putting the mask on the canopies because it was very tedious. It took me 2 nights to do it, to be careful, because there's a lot of it's not much to mask actually. It's pretty nice, except that there's curves on there, and because it's a vac form canopy with very few lines on there, um, it made for an interesting time. It all turned out, but I'll show you what it looks like when it's done and try to point some things out. So here it is, all masked and ready to be painted. I put a piece of tape over that opening because that's going to be where the exhaust stacks will go in there. The rear piece is all taped up and it goes right down to the edge. And then the main canopy has got a very fine edge all the way around and curves, as you can see. And there's an area I'm trying to point out right around there, all the way around and even around the door, which was really not as bad as it looked to get right. Some of the curves, you just cut a fine piece of, a thin piece of the Tamiya tape and just, it'll almost stretch and go around the corners, and that works really well. But there's an edging all the way around the canopy. And then there's a chunk there that I think is some kind of, I don't know, it looks like there's a piece of fuselage there. I masked that window by just putting some tape on the inside. And then this part is I got tissue paper in there. And I'm hoping that it keeps everything out. So, and to get the window or the door, to get the curves around for the tape, I just took the door, put it down on some tape, and basically traced around it with a knife, cut it all the way around, and then that gave me my sort of correct angle. And so I was able to put it on there and make sure it was kind of even all the way around. Because there is, like I said, not the door has its own frame, but there's a frame that it goes into on the window. You know, the window doesn't come right to the edge of the door. So that was a little delicate, but it worked. Fixed that part. And now we are basically ready to start priming and painting. However, I decided I'm going to try this. I'm going to use a little aluminum foil and put it around the legs, and just so that maybe it would keep them. And I used the metal from a Lindt chili chocolate, and it was delicious. Oh, and then finally, there's a little splitter there in that scoop that doesn't come with the model that looks pretty prominent, and I think it looks cool in there, a little extra detail. So now we'll be ready to prime and paint.